What happens when a Hollywood icon known for avoiding daytime TV suddenly finds himself face to face with one of the most outspoken voices at the table? And neither of them is in the mood to back down. Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. Joy Behar leans forward slightly, smiling but clearly curious. So, Johnny, first of all, thank you for being here. You don't do a lot of shows like this. Johnny Depp gives a small nod, adjusting his rings almost unconsciously. Yeah, it's not usually my thing, but I wanted to speak for myself, in my own words. Whoopi Goldberg turns toward him, her tone calm but direct. And that's fair. But when you come on a show like this, people are going to ask questions. Some tough ones. Johnny meets her gaze. I understand that. Sunny Hostin jumps in, voice measured. You've said you felt misunderstood by the media. Do you feel like talk shows played a role in that? Johnny exhales slowly. I think sometimes conversations get simplified. Real life isn't sound bites. A murmur of agreement ripples through part of the audience. Whoopi tilts her head. But Johnny, respectfully, when serious accusations are involved, people are going to talk about them. That's not simplification, that's accountability. There's a slight pause. Johnny shifts in his chair. Accountability is important. Absolutely. But so is truth. And sometimes the loudest voices aren't the most accurate. The audience reacts, some applause, some audible oohs. Joy raises her hand slightly. Okay, let's keep this civil. Whoopi doesn't smile. I am being civil. I'm saying, you can't blame every tough question on the media. Johnny's jaw tightens just a bit. I'm not blaming tough questions. I'm talking about conclusions being drawn before facts are heard. Sunny looks between them. But didn't you choose to take this public? Johnny nods. Because it was already public. I didn't have a choice. Whoopi leans back, arms crossed now. See, this is where I disagree. There's always a choice in how you respond. And sometimes silence speaks louder than courtrooms. The audience gasps lightly. Johnny looks surprised but keeps his voice steady. With respect, silence can also look like guilt. That gets a stronger reaction, applause mixed with tension. Joy jumps in quickly. All right, we're not here to retry anything. We're here to talk about how this affected you. Whoopi turns to Joy. But that's the point. Effects go both ways. Public figures don't get to opt out of public conversation when it gets uncomfortable. Johnny looks directly at Whoopi now. I'm not opting out. I'm sitting right here. There's a beat. The room feels tighter. Sunny clears her throat. Johnny, do you feel unfairly treated by women on talk shows? Johnny blinks. No. I feel unfairly treated by narratives. Whoopi shakes her head slightly. Narratives are built on behavior. Johnny's tone sharpens just a notch. And behavior is often misinterpreted when people decide who you are before you speak. The audience reacts again, this time louder. Joy laughs nervously. Okay, we're heating up early. Whoopi turns fully toward Johnny. Let me ask you something straight. Do you think the public owes you understanding? Johnny doesn't answer immediately. He looks down, then back up. I think the public owes itself the full picture. Whoopi responds instantly. And who decides what the full picture is? You. Johnny raises an eyebrow. No. Truth does. A few people clap. Others stay quiet. Sunny interjects. But truth can be subjective. Johnny shakes his head. Facts aren't. Whoopi leans forward again. Facts also include how people feel when power dynamics are involved. Johnny's voice lowers. Power doesn't protect you from lies. The audience goes completely still for a second. Joy quickly cuts in. All right, we're going to take a breath here. Whoopi doesn't break eye contact with Johnny. I'm just saying accountability isn't an attack. Johnny nods slowly. And defense isn't denial. That line triggers a strong audience reaction, applause mixed with murmurs. Sunny looks uneasy. This is clearly emotional for you. Johnny lets out a short breath. It is, because it's my life. Whoopi's tone softens slightly but stays firm. And other lives were affected too. Johnny nods again. I know, and I live with that every day. There's a moment of silence that feels unplanned, raw. Joy looks at the camera briefly, then back. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. Whoopi adds quietly but audibly, and we will. Johnny gives a small, tight smile. I wouldn't expect anything less. The audience buzzes as the tension hangs in the air, and the show cuts away, leaving everyone wondering just how far this conversation is about to go. The show comes back from break with the audience still buzzing, clapping a little louder than usual as the hosts settle back into their seats. Joy smiles tightly, the kind of smile that says she knows exactly how tense things feel. Joy Behar says, "All right, we're back." Clearly, this conversation struck a nerve, both here and at home. Whoopi Goldberg looks straight ahead for a moment before turning back to Johnny. "Johnny, during the break, we were talking about how these conversations don't just live in studios. They spill out into real lives." Johnny nods. "I know they do." Sunny Hostin leans in. "You said something before the break that caught a lot of attention. Defense isn't denial. Can you explain what you meant by that?" Johnny takes a second, choosing his words carefully. "It means that standing up for yourself doesn't mean you're dismissing other people's pain. It means you're saying, this isn't the whole truth about me." Whoopi responds quickly. "But sometimes defending yourself can sound like you're invalidating someone else's experience." Johnny looks at her. "Only if we assume there's only room for one truth." The audience reacts with a mix of applause and murmurs. Joy lifts a finger. "But that's tricky, right? Because in public debates, nuance gets lost." Johnny nods. "Exactly. And once nuance is gone, people pick sides instead of listening." Whoopi exhales audibly. "Here's my issue. When men with power talk about being misunderstood, a lot of women hear, 'You're not being believed.' There's a strong reaction from the audience, some applause, some sharp intakes of breath. Johnny keeps his tone calm. "I hear that. I really do. But what happens when not believing me becomes the default position?" Sunny looks between them. "Do you feel like you were presumed guilty from the start?" Johnny answers without hesitation. "Yes." The audience responds loudly, clapping and murmuring at the same time. Whoopi tilts her head. "But public opinion isn't a court of law." Johnny replies, "Tell that to studios that stop calling." That line lands hard. The audience reacts immediately. Joy jumps in. "Okay, that's a real consequence." Whoopi turns toward Joy. "It is. But consequences also exist for people who feel unheard." Johnny nods slowly. "And I'm not arguing against that. I'm arguing against certainty without context." Sunny presses. "Do you think talk shows like this one contributed to that certainty?" There's a brief pause. Johnny looks around the table. "I think some conversations did. And I think others tried to be fair." Whoopi raises an eyebrow. "Which category do you think this one falls into?" The audience chuckles nervously. Johnny smiles faintly. "I think this one is honest, even when it's uncomfortable." Whoopi gives a small nod, but doesn't fully relax. "Honest also means pushing back." Johnny replies, "And I respect that." Joy leans forward. "Let me ask you something more personal. How did all of this change you?" Johnny's shoulders drop slightly. "It made me quieter, more guarded." Sunny says softly, "But you're here." Johnny looks at her. "Because staying quiet didn't protect me either." The audience applauds. Whoopi looks thoughtful now. "You know, a lot of people watching at home aren't celebrities. They're thinking about their own lives." Johnny nods. "I know. And that's why I try to speak carefully." Whoopi responds, "But careful speech can still hurt." Johnny's voice tightens just a bit. "So can careless judgment." The tension rises again, palpable. Joy laughs lightly, trying to break it. "Well, nobody accused this table of being careless." The audience laughs, easing the moment slightly. Sunny looks at Johnny. "Do you feel like you've been able to rebuild trust?" Johnny shakes his head slowly. "Not fully. Trust takes time. And consistency." Whoopi crosses her arms again. "And accountability." Johnny meets her gaze. "And fairness." The audience reacts with another wave of noise. Joy looks toward the camera briefly. This is clearly resonating. Whoopi turns back to Johnny. "Let me be very clear. I don't think you're lying just to lie. I think memory, emotion, and perspective complicate things." Johnny nods. "I agree with that." Whoopi continues. "But I also think people in your position underestimate how intimidating that power can be." Johnny responds calmly. "And I think people underestimate how isolating it is to be stripped of credibility overnight." There's a beat. The audience quiets. Sunny breaks the silence. "Johnny, do you feel angry?" Johnny considers it. "I feel tired. Angry sometimes. Mostly tired." Whoopi softens just a little. "That I understand." Johnny looks at her, surprised. "Thank you." Joy smiles gently. "Progress." The audience chuckles. Sunny asks, "If you could say one thing to viewers who strongly disagree with you, what would it be?" Johnny answers slowly. "I'd say, you don't have to like me. You don't have to support me. Just question certainty." Whoopi responds, and I'd say question power. The audience applauds both comments. Johnny smiles faintly. Fair. Joy looks relieved. All right, that felt like a moment. Whoopi nods. It did. Johnny exhales. These conversations matter. Even when they're messy. Sunny adds, especially when they're messy. The audience applauds again, longer this time. Joy glances at the clock. We're not done yet. Whoopi turns toward Johnny once more. When we come back, I want to talk about what responsibility looks like after the cameras turn off. Johnny nods. I'm ready. The audience reacts with anticipation as the tension resets. Not gone, but shifted. Waiting for what comes next as the show heads into another break. The show returns again, and the energy in the room is noticeably heavier now. The audience applause is strong but more restrained, like people are settling in, knowing this isn't just surface-level talk anymore. Joy takes a breath before speaking. Joy Behar says, All right, we're back. Before the break, Whoopi brought up responsibility after the cameras turn off. Let's go there. Whoopi Goldberg turns toward Johnny, her voice calm but serious. Because this is where a lot of conversations stop and real life begins. Johnny nods. I agree. Whoopi continues. When the show ends, when the headlines move on, people still live with what was said. Do you think about that responsibility? Johnny doesn't answer right away. He folds his hands, then looks up. Every day. More than I used to. Sunny Hostin leans forward. In what way? Johnny replies, I think about how words travel. How they land on people who don't know me, and how they land on people who think they do. The audience murmurs softly. Whoopi responds, But Johnny, a lot of people feel like you're talking about reputation, while others are talking about harm. Johnny looks directly at her. Because reputation loss can be harm. It changes how you exist in the world. There's an audible reaction from the audience, some applause, some disagreement. Joy raises her eyebrows. That's a controversial take. Johnny nods. I know, but losing your ability to work, to be trusted, to be seen as human, that does something to you. Whoopi counters quickly. And so does being afraid to speak up. Johnny replies just as fast. And so does not being believed when you do. The tension snaps back instantly. Sunny interjects. Do you hear how similar those statements sound? There's a pause. Johnny blinks. Yeah, I do. Whoopi exhales. That's the frustrating part. People are talking past each other. Johnny says quietly, because fear makes everyone defensive. The audience reacts with a low hum of agreement. Joy nods. Okay, that feels honest. Whoopi leans back slightly. Let me ask you this then. Do you regret going public the way you did? Johnny's expression tightens. I regret that it had to be public at all. Sunny presses gently. But once it was public? Johnny thinks. Once it was public. I regret not understanding how permanent it would be. The audience is silent now, fully locked in. Whoopi looks at him closely. Permanent is the right word. Johnny nods. You don't get to rewind the internet. Joy lets out a short laugh. If only. A few people in the audience chuckle, breaking the tension just a bit. Sunny asks, Did you feel pressure to present yourself a certain way after everything? Johnny answers honestly. Yes. To be calm. To be likable. To not show anger, because anger would be used against me. Whoopi responds immediately. That pressure exists for women too. Johnny nods without hesitation. I know it does. That acknowledgement earns a round of applause. Whoopi studies him. So where do you think empathy breaks down? Johnny answers softly. When people decide the outcome before the conversation. Whoopi counters, and when people ignore patterns. Johnny replies, and when patterns become shortcuts. The audience reacts again, some clapping, some uneasy shifting. Joy steps in. This is starting to sound like philosophy class. Sunny smiles briefly. But it's real life. Whoopi turns serious again. Here's something I want to be very clear about. Criticism isn't cancellation. Johnny responds, I agree. But erasure feels like cancellation. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. Erasure? Johnny explains. Being removed from conversations entirely. Being talked about, but not talked to. The audience murmurs. Sunny asks, Is that why you decided to come here? Johnny nods. Yes, because I wanted to be spoken with, not spoken over. Whoopi pauses. That's fair. Johnny looks surprised again, but appreciative. Thank you. Joy smiles. We're getting somewhere. Whoopi continues. But I still struggle with something. Johnny waits. Whoopi says, When powerful people say they're victims, it complicates conversations about real vulnerability. Johnny responds carefully. I don't think vulnerability is owned by any group. The audience reacts strongly to that line. Sunny jumps in. But power changes context. Johnny nods. It does. But it doesn't remove pain. Whoopi looks at Sunny, then back at Johnny. I hear that. I just don't want that message to silence others. Johnny replies, and I don't want fear of speaking to silence truth. There's another pause, heavy but not hostile. Joy looks at the audience. You can feel it in this room. The audience applauds softly. Sunny asks, Johnny, what would accountability look like to you in an ideal world? Johnny answers slowly. It would look like listening before judging, and consequences based on facts, not momentum. Whoopi responds, and to me, accountability also looks like acknowledging impact, even when intent wasn't there. Johnny nods. That's fair. The audience reacts positively to the mutual recognition. Joy exhales. Okay, that felt important. Whoopi gives a small nod. It did. Johnny sits back slightly, his posture easing for the first time. These conversations are exhausting, but necessary. Sunny smiles. Welcome to daytime television. The audience laughs. Joy glances at the clock again. We have one more segment. Whoopi turns toward Johnny, her tone steady but open. When we come back, I want to talk about what happened after all of this, how the public reacted, how your life changed, and where things stand now. Johnny nods. I'm ready to talk about that. The audience applauds as the show heads into its final break, the tension no longer explosive but unresolved, hanging in the air, waiting for the aftermath. The show comes back for the final time, and the applause is louder, more sustained. People are on their feet for a second longer than usual before settling down. There's a sense that something real just happened, and everyone in the room knows it. Joy Behar waits for the noise to die down. All right, this has been a conversation. The audience laughs, a little nervously, a little approvingly. Whoopi Goldberg looks out at the crowd, then back to Johnny. Before we wrap this up, I want to talk about what happened after everything went public. After the trials, after the headlines, after the opinions were already formed. Johnny nods, his expression serious but calmer than earlier. That was the hardest part. Sunny Hostin leans in. Harder than being in court. Johnny answers honestly. In court, there are rules. Afterward, there aren't. The audience murmurs in agreement. Whoopi says, What changed for you day to day? Johnny exhales. People looked at me differently. Some with sympathy. Some with anger. Some like they already knew my entire story. Joy shakes her head. That's a lot to carry. Johnny nods. It is. And you don't really get to put it down. Sunny asks, Did you feel supported? Johnny hesitates. By some people. Very deeply. By others, silence. Whoopi responds. Silence can be loud. Johnny gives a small smile. Yeah, I learned that. The audience applauds softly. Joy turns toward Whoopi. You've been very open on this topic over the years. Watching this conversation unfold, did anything surprise you? Whoopi takes a moment. What surprised me was how familiar it felt. Not the details, but the emotions. The defensiveness. The fear of being misunderstood. She looks back at Johnny. That's not unique to celebrities. Johnny nods. No, it's not. Sunny adds. And that's why people at home are reacting so strongly. Joy gestures toward the audience. You can feel it. The audience applauds again. Whoopi continues. After shows like this, people don't just talk. They post. They clip. They choose sides. Johnny nods. I know. By tonight, there'll be headlines. Joy laughs lightly. Oh, already. The audience laughs. Sunny says, How do you prepare for that? Johnny answers, You don't. You just hope that at least part of the conversation makes it through intact. Whoopi looks thoughtful. And if it doesn't? Johnny shrugs slightly. Then I live with that too. There's a quiet respect in the room now. Joy says, We've already seen audience reactions coming in. Sunny adds, Our producers are telling us social media is busy. The audience chuckles. Whoopi turns to Johnny. Does it bother you knowing people are reacting in real time? Johnny shakes his head. What bothers me is when reaction replaces reflection. The audience applauds. Joy nods. That's fair. Sunny asks, What happened after you decided to step back from the spotlight for a while? Johnny answers, I focused on work that mattered to me. Smaller projects. Music. Things that reminded me who I was before all this. Whoopi smiles faintly. Grounding. Johnny nods. Very. Joy looks curious. Did this experience change how you see interviews like this one? Johnny chuckles quietly. Yeah, I don't see them as promotion anymore. I see them as risk. The audience reacts with laughter and applause. Whoopi responds, that honesty right there. That's why this matters. Johnny looks at her. I appreciate that. There's a brief pause, then Joy speaks. I want to say something. Everyone turns toward her. Joy continues. We don't all have to agree to have a meaningful conversation, but we do have to listen. The audience applauds loudly. Whoopi nods. Exactly. Sunny adds, and accountability and empathy don't have to cancel each other out. Johnny smiles, a real one this time. I wish more conversations started there. Whoopi looks at him. So do I. The audience claps again, some people cheering. Joy glances at the camera. This is one of those shows people will be talking about. Whoopi turns back to Johnny. Before we let you go, is there anything you want people watching to take away from this? Johnny thinks for a moment. That certainty is easy. Listening is harder. But listening is where understanding starts. The audience applauds strongly. Whoopi nods. I can stand by that. Joy smiles. Well, that doesn't happen every day. The audience laughs. Sunny looks at Johnny. Thank you for staying in the conversation, even when it got uncomfortable. Johnny nods. Thank you for letting it be uncomfortable. Whoopi extends a hand slightly in his direction. That's where growth is. Johnny meets her gesture with a nod of respect. Agreed. The audience applauds one last time, louder and longer, some standing again. Joy faces the camera. All right, that's all the time we have today. Whoopi adds, we know people at home will have opinions. Sunny smiles, and we want to hear them. Johnny looks toward the camera briefly, then back at the table. Joy concludes, let us know what you thought of today's conversation. Whoopi nods. Did this change your perspective? Or challenge it? Sunny adds, join the discussion. And as the applause continues and the credits begin to roll, the conversation clearly doesn't end in the studio. It carries on online, in comments, in debates, in posts and clips, proof that sometimes a talk show moment doesn't resolve everything, but it opens the door to something deeper. Make sure to share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.